final speaker this morning is Diana Foster. Diana is the director and founder of the People's Museum Somerstown, a community museum dedicated to preserving and celebrating, and I quote, radicals, reformers and rebels' histories. She's worked to bring Somerstown's people's histories to light for the past decade through filmmaking, oral histories, publications, and most recently as the proposer to English Heritage to commemorate Irene Barclay with the blue plaque, as we're doing today. So, thank you, Diana.
Hello everyone, some of you know me. I run a museum, and the reason I proposed Irene and I opened a museum is because I was inspired by the housing story in Somerstown. It's a utopian housing project, and I realised, walking around, Basil Jellicoe is behind me, he has a blue plaque. Well, he died quite young in 1936, and yeah, his achievements were amazing, but the woman didn't get the blue plaque, so just being feminist here for a minute, she worked for 50 years, knocking on doors, doing all the hard work, all the unpaid labour that women often do, and she doesn't get a blue plaque. So really, I had to propose a blue plaque for Irene. But just, my battery's low, so I might have to speak without those. So, not good planning. Yeah. So it is an inspirational housing association, but I'm going to focus a little bit about her approach, which was very much, and actually the approach of the housing association was very much about people, and someone's referred to a book, People Need Roots. It's a great read, actually, it's out of print. But she focused on keeping communities and families together. And some of that sort of 50 years unpaid labour, if you like, or paid or whatever, going round meant she knocked on doors, she noticed things. If a wedding ring was missing, it meant possibly that that family couldn't pay the rent because they'd pawned the wedding ring. If a doorstep wasn't cleaned, maybe someone was ill. And they did check up on those things. I think she was recalled very fondly. There was a group of landladies, including Phyllis Hodges and other people like that, who really intimately knew all the residents. I remember Dave Hofeling's not here today, sadly, but he would always say to me, she knew all our names when we were kids. So you couldn't really get away with anything because they tell your mum. So, yeah, she, people knew that she wasn't the same class as them, but she understood what was going on. And I think it was run as a tight ship, that's the feeling I get, but there was a care as well. She had authority over the other landladies. Someone told me she seemed like she was the boss. But she, that fact of knowing everybody and observing, they were kind of like social workers in a way as well. Doreen, who I'm glad is here, Doreen Sharps, there's a film in which she appears. I was told, and I hope this is correct, that many people obviously in Somerstown were evacuated in the war because it was, near stations that were likely to be bombs. She was evacuated at the age of 6, and her mum was invalided, and she remembers coming back at 12, and everything was there because Irene had made sure that all the belongings were there. So that's, that sort of care. Yeah, and Joan told me as a young couple they were given flats, because obviously what you did was you got married and you knocked on the door and you said, need a flat, Mrs. Barclay. But they didn't like the flat they were given. The first choice they were given was not, and one of the other landladies said, well, if you're desperate, you'll take it. But Irene stepped in and said, no, because they're not going to be happy there, so let's find them another one. So it's those sort of touches, isn't it, that, that she had. So it's nice to be in this hall as well, because this is one of the other things that Irene did was focus on community. They had this saying, housing is not enough, along with people need roots. And it's about community as well as bricks and mortar, although you could say this year we haven't got enough housing and that problem still is there. But this hall was where they ran a panto. They called it the Mums Club, and some of the regulars, and sadly George can't be with us today, remembers his mum, and there's a little clip of film we've got in the museum of her dancing on the stage. The Mums Club did Panto, they did Aladdin, and famously there was one night where Aladdin, the woman playing Aladdin, and she was called Fat Flo, not my words, had to go home because she'd forgotten her teeth. So, you know, they didn't have Aladdin and they had to carry on, but they, when they realised, they thought, right, we've got to go and get her, you know, because we need Aladdin. So they went to get her and her husband said, no, she's got to make my dinner. So, but the whole cast turned up, you know, so we had no choice. But in those days, that was unusual, wasn't it, for the 30s, women to sort of be, you know, in mums clubs on their own and have a night off from their domestic labour. But I'm glad that we're here. The stage is long gone, but the hall is still here. We started as a history club here doing events, talking about things, gathering memories, because I genuinely think it's a really inspirational project. The people that grew up in that are kind of lucky, you know, because that time. And, you know, Somerstown, the other reason why we set up a museum, it's the most deprived ward still. It still has, as everywhere in London, a massive housing crisis. We've also got, because of the stations, encroaching development. The luxury tower block was built on a public park. It sort of seems as if Somerstown might disappear in that strong centre it has of social housing and care. That's a narrative the museum's trying to keep alive against the sort of pseudo-narratives of regeneration. And that's why I started a museum. And this year is the centenary of the St Pancras Housing Association, and we're doing a series of events to celebrate. And I'm so glad this blue plaque came out in this year. It's